Githae, who's a public financial management advisor. That is donors and governments basically across. Thank you so much, Dr. for creating time to be here with us. I'm told economists would always prefer to be referred to as CPA as opposed to doctor. Which one is best?
CPA starts.
CPA starts there. So CPA Dr. Githae. But of course, as I refer to you, Dr. would suffice?
That's okay.
That is okay. Karibu sana. Thank you for creating time to be here with us for the very first time on Morning Cafe.
Yes.
And we discuss very, very important thing in relation to the economy. Yes. And as well, we have CPA Alex Kamau, ISPAC representative. Thank you so much for creating time to be here with us this morning as we get to this very conversation. Later on, political historian, that is Professor Macharia Munene, will join us again for the very same conversation. Thank you so much for creating time. ISPAC has done a great job in terms of just helping us unpack the situation of finances in the country. And here we are at it again. Looks like ISPAC will always have work all through. The economy, not in the best of shape, but then again, an introduction of taxes that appear as though they would pinch into the pockets of the common mwananchi even more. Of concern is that even when the government would take these taxes, the unfortunate thing is that we do not experience the developments in return. Perhaps that is why Kenyans are saying that really we might not have a problem with being overtaxed or being taxed, but we would want to see value for money. What do you make of the 2023 financial bill so far?
Thank you very much, Linda. Let me start by also acknowledging our institute chair, that is FCPA George Mukua, who in his wisdom decided to allow me to come to TV47 to represent the institute. My name is, as you have said, is CPA. I probably forgot to say doctor.
Doctor, yeah,
CPA
Dr.
Alex Kamau.
So you people tell me which comes first. It's actually CPA Dr. Alex Kamau.
Yes.
My apologies for that. So
yes.
CPA stands in this case?
Yes, CPA Dr. Alex. Yeah, for sure, CPA is okay. So, because of course you differentiate myself and the doctor. That's fine. You have asked a very relevant question. What is my take about the proposed financial bill?
Yeah.
And I would say it depends from which side you are looking at it, because there are two people who are majorly affected by this bill. That is the taxpayer and the government.
Yeah.
There are areas that the government has given some leeway or some relief to the taxpayer in terms of lowering the tax rates.
Yeah.
But there are some areas that the government has actually proposed to increase the tax rates and also to widen the tax bracket. On the other hand, the government is also, some areas it is pushing to increase the tax revenue collection by of course increasing the tax rates. But on the other hand, the government is also trying not to increase the tax rates, because if it does so, it is going to increase the cost of living, which is already high. Yeah. The inflation is already high. The issues of exchange rate is already high. So it is a tight balance for the government to ensure that it collects enough revenue for it to be able to pay the balloon in public debt, and also not to hurt the plight of the common mwananchi.
Aside from the ballooning debt, there is also the budget that is being proposed, likely to sit at about 3.6 trillion. Over the years, we've not been able to sustain our very own budget. So of importance actually is making sure that we're able to sustain our budget, then think of how we're going to manage the debt situation in the country. Just what do you suppose the government is doing in this conversation of tax? Overtax them so that you create a balance? Does that really work?
Thank you, Linda. I think for the purpose of viewers, it's good to bring out some aspects. Basically, is in any society, the society comes up with what we call the government, and then the government is responsible for implementing the projects, and then those projects are from the engagement with the society, and this comes during the campaign, during the elections. And then those projects are supposed to help the well-being of the society on one side. And then that's why then we normally have what we call the policy budget statement, which is normally presented within the course of this month and next month. So those are the projects. Now, for these projects to be financed, then the government, as the other side of the coin, which is basically the finance bill. And the finance bill is basically the proposed way within which the government wants to raise the income or revenue to finance these projects. So what the society does is to tell the government, okay, go ahead and implement the projects, use the finance bill also to raise resources and finance. What happens is then as the government implement the projects, we also have what is called the oversight. It is part of the society, which is the members of parliament and the rest. And then we also have the judicial. So there are three components within the society which are charged with execution of projects and income, which is government, oversight mainly, which is the parliament, and now the judiciary in the event there is some disagreements and the arbitration. So what happens is, and even before then, I just want to make it very clear that psychology of human beings is human beings don't want to pay taxes. Yeah. And that's where the rubber meets the road. Human beings don't want to pay taxes. They don't want to be taxed unless you can convince them that when you tax them, you are going to give them benefits. And this is even historical, is religious. So the most important thing is to assure that the taxpayer that once you tax, you are going to give the benefits. So we need to look at it from both sides. That if you tax through the finance bill, then on the other side, implement the projects which will give the taxpayer the benefits and the comfort he or she needs. Okay. That is where there's a problem. There's a problem.
At what point can we trust the government to, assure us, or have they failed to assure us that, well, even as we tax our way to prosperity, whether that is realistic or not, then there's guarantee of you experiencing the best of services, the best of development. Perhaps that's a conversation that we should be revolving around. And just what then does the government need to ensure or to do to make sure that people are convinced that it's fine, you will take money from us, but then again, there's going to be value for that money. Of course, the housing conversation is one that brings a lot of fear in relation to this, and perhaps that one is it's something that has a target to it. You can evidently see that there are structures coming up, but just what is the guarantee that those ones that pay for these structures are going to be the ultimate beneficiaries of them? This is basically what we'll be having this morning. And as Dr. here says, is that most of the times people do not want to pay taxes unless they are convinced that there's going to be value for money. I remember during the BBI conversation when there was that introduction of tax breaks as well as tax holiday. And said, who said we do not want to pay tax? We want to pay tax for as long as we're going to get value for that. So that is the conversation this morning. The hashtag is Morning Cafe at Linda_Lela TV47KE. I'll be looking at some of your comments as we continue with the broadcast. Allow us to take a quick short break and then we come back with the doctors as well as Professor Macharia Munene.
Wakati mwingine kama weekend, mimi najiachilia.
Hata ukumbuki history. Nikifika watu wangu wakinipokea na kupokeleka.
Umeset the mood.
Nimeset the mood. Naweza kupokeleka. Nikitumai kwamba mzima popote pale ulipo, nikikukaribisha katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi. Jina langu Elizabeth Mutuku, na katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi tunakupa nafasi kutangamana nao kila siku ya Alhamisi kuanzia saa 1:30 kuendelea siku nyingine. Tutapatana papa hapa umjue kiongozi mwingine.
Jiunge nasi toka hapa hadi ufuoni mwa bahari. Meli yetu itakapotua nanga kwa uhondo ribo ya riwaya hii mwisho wa kosa. Monica.
It's early morning in Maralal. Start your morning informed, educated, entertained, and above all, know your country. From the beautiful plains of Samburu County to the skyscrapers of Nairobi, Morning Cafe certainly got you covered. Indeed, a beautiful place to watch and certainly a moment of understanding and knowing your country. Indeed, to the remotest parts of every county. Join me, Linda Alela, every weekday from 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. And this is Morning Cafe. The hashtag is Morning Cafe at Linda_Lela TV 47 KE. In studio with us, CPA Dr. Githae, who is a public financial management advisor, both for donors and governments, as well as CPA Dr. Kamau, who's seated right next to me, ISPAC representative. Thank you so much for creating time to be with us, gentlemen. We now officially get into the conversation. Interestingly, you find that this is the story that is the biggest story across all the papers this morning. It is about, the tax plan, and the Right Honorable Raila Odinga says that Ruto's tax plan is a big burden. We always have to put a tag on this, because then again, it is evidently about the Kenya Kwanza government, and everybody's talking about the Kenya Kwanza government tax plan, Ruto's tax plan. And so I think the buck stops with them as to, making adjustments or approving as it is, and, confirming to the people of Kenya that this is going to work to, to make us perhaps have, answers to the economic tough times that we've had over years. You will agree with me that one of the key things that, most of the parties were campaigning on in relation to how they get to entice the people was on the question of the economy. We actually called it an economic elections, because basically it was about reminding the people of Kenya, that the Jubilee government has not done well. The economic tough times that have been, brought aboard by the COVID-19, by the drought situation, by the Ukraine-Russia war, and many other, things in the country. And so it was all about giving the people of Kenya the promise. So the People Daily speaks of what it is that the Right Honorable Raila Odinga has to say in relation to the tax proposal. The Daily Nation says Raila takes on Ruto in a taxes battle. And then again, there is the Standard newspaper that speaks on tax pain. You are on your own. Now, this is what perhaps Kenyans would fear the most, because they say opposition coalition opposes the proposed new tax measures and makes an admission that the finance bill may pass in Parliament because of government's overwhelming majority. In fact, I don't know, I think I have that note by the Azimio team. They're not in any way a little bit lenient. They're not. They are hard. They're hitting it hard, and they are complaining that the government is not doing it so well. And of course, what they say, and with Azimio not providing alternative measures to rein in government appetite for extra money, Mwananchi has been left on their own. Mwananchi has an option of presenting their proposal, and I think the lines are open for them to do so. Not so much time left, and we'll be looking at the timelines and just how the Mwananchi then gets to present this. What do you make of the headlines first?
Yes, the opposition is doing its work, which is to oversight the government and to try and speak on behalf of the Mwananchi. Because there are these tax policies proposals that have been put forward by the government, and the opposition now would want to step in and say there are taxes that we feel they are counterproductive to the economy of the country. So basically that's what the opposition is doing, and they have that fear that even after public participation, which we are doing by trying to unpack the provisions of the Finance Bill 2023 to the general Mwananchi, and they are supposed to relay their concerns. The general Mwananchi, the Wanjiko, is supposed to relay their concerns to the elected leaders, so that at the end of the day, the MPs will go to the parliament and also share those concerns, and they will either be considered favorably or not favorably. So there's that concern that the Azimio is raising, that because of the parliament being composed and being constituted majorly by the ruling party, this public participation may not add so much, may not be successful at the end of the day, because they feel it's like the die is cast.
All right, the die is cast, and there's zero belief in what would happen at the level of Parliament in terms of having consideration or putting consideration to the cries of the common mwananchi, that beyond the Azimio team, we have even heard some of us that are Kenyans that probably understand the aspects and the prospects of economy, saying that, well, this perhaps would not be the right direction for us. So overlooking what it is that the Azimio side would say, because then one would say that is politically instigated. Do you suppose the Kenya Kwanza team would be considerate of the common mwananchi, because it's at the level of the parliament that even as we present our proposal, it is for them to make those two considerations, and it's the majority minority. If they enjoy the majority, and then this is a proposal by their very own government, what are we expecting?
The most important thing is both the formations. That's Kenya Kwanza and Azimio. They came to the society and they discussed through the campaign and engagements.
Yeah.
And what happened is Kenyans decided to choose the current formation, which is Kenya Kwanza. And that was based on the manifesto they have. And they went ahead and entered into what we call the social contract. So the Kenya Kwanza as a social contract with the Kenyans to implement certain projects. These projects and programs have to be financed in one way or other. And I think that's why the Kenya Kwanza has come up with the proposed taxes through the finance bill. And that will be discussed in Parliament and among other forums. I'm sure there will be changes here and there, and most likely it might go through. In the event it goes through, this is the only way that it becomes an act of Parliament, which therefore will be able to actualize the raising of these taxes. I think we need to look at the issue in a different way. If Kenya Kwanza wants to raise, say, 3.6 trillion, then the most important thing and prudent thing is to ask, if I get 3.6 trillion from the Kenyans, then I have to use these funds so prudently, like the way you can be able to invest in a project, so that then you can be able to spur the economy, to get more benefits. And then so that subsequent years, you can even say, look at it. I got 3.6 from you guys, I expanded the GDP, and then these are some of the benefits you are getting. You are getting. So this is the conversation we should be able to have between the Kenyan society and the Kenya Kwanza government. So that subsequent years, then you can be able to say, by the way, instead of even raising 3.6, why don't you put 5 trillion, for example? If the benefits are there. I think the challenge we have is, how well is Kenya Kwanza going to use the resources which is going to be raised through the finance bill in accordance to Chapter 12 of the Constitution, which is public finance, and of course the subsequent Public Financial Management Act 2012 is amended by 2015. So the most important thing is the utilization of these resources. It's where the challenge is.
Dr. Githae, that for sure is a fact, and that has been the challenge over years. And perhaps one would be forgiven to ask this question or to argue that fine, they could even guarantee us that they're going to put this money to use, that this money is not going to be used for corrupt activities. This money is not going to be fleeced. This money, we're going to see roads, we're going to see, universal healthcare being implemented, to the maximum. We really are going to see industrialization, booming up. We really are going to see so much playing out in the country. But even before it gets to that level, Dr. Alex, reality is that Kenyans might not even have this money. And I'd want to look at what it is that, the Azimio speaks of. And they say there are a couple of things that you need to understand about the salary of a common mwananchi today. They highlight where some of these salaries then would go. They speak of the fact that, 4 things will be involved. And I hope I can remember what it is that they speak of. First of all, they say that, your salary will either go to paying loans, your salary will go to taxes, your salary will go to, hand-to-mouth affair, and literally then you're left with nothing. So even before you promise us that for sure this tax is going to be put to use, where is the money to tax?
For sure. A very good question, Linda. And I think it's not that the Kenyans are overtaxed. It's the fact that Kenyans don't see how their money is being used. Because Scandinavian countries, that is Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, they are the highest taxed in the world. Actually, the highest income bracket for the Scandinavian countries is 50%. That right now, the current finance bill is proposing to increase the highest taxed Kenyan from 30% to 35%. For Scandinavian countries, it is already at 50%. If you earn 100,000, automatically 50,000 goes to the government in form of taxes. And that is direct taxes. There are those that are called indirect taxes, like when you are consuming fuel, there's VAT. And in terms of VAT for Scandinavian countries, it averages about 25%. And the average VAT, and the VAT here in Kenya is 16%. But again, when we come to the research, which is the happiest country in the world, you will find Sweden, Denmark, and Norway being coming among the top happiest countries in the world. So they are the most taxed, and they are the happiest. The happiest. So
because then there's value for
because
what it is
because there's value. Yes. So when we come to the local context here in Kenya, we may not say that we are highly taxed compared to the Scandinavian countries going by the parameters that I have shared. But now the concern is that Wanjiku doesn't feel the impact of the taxes that he's remitting to the government in terms of the issues. For instance, right now, the universities are struggling with the issue of help. Even the government is struggling to relay the money that is supposed to give to the county governments. There's the issue of there's the issue, and of course, when the county government don't have money, then the private sector, which does business with the county government, doesn't flourish, because the people who do roads, the people who do projects with the government, whether national government or a county government, they do work and then they stay for months before getting paid. So because of that, as you are saying, there's no much money in circulation, and the little that is in circulation has been, the purchasing power for that money has been eroded by the skyrocketing inflation that we're experiencing. So there's a big question as as Kenya Kwanza, the current government, tries to raise that revenue so that it can finance its projects and programs. The question is, do Kenyans have that money?
Do Kenyans have that money? And you speak of help, and I know of the numerous cases where people have been, sought for evading to pay, help, for evading to pay taxes. Because perhaps you're looking at your 50,000 and you're thinking, now, this 50,000 cannot even manage my own needs at this very point. So how then do I even pay for help? How do I pay for this other amount of money that the government is speaking about? So it's fine. You could say that, well, if you guarantee us that in a huge way we're going to get value for this money. The question is as simple as, where is the money to tax anyway?
Good. Leader started by saying the psychology of human beings is human beings don't want to pay tax. They don't want to be taxed. Unless you can convince them that once you tax them, for example, each shilling you tax, what the taxpayer wants to see is, show me whether I can get benefits more than 1 shilling. Because that is what a taxpayer wants.
Is that to say then that we're trying to shoot this bill early, even before we've understood what the government intends to do with the money? I mean, we have not given the government the chance to explain to the people of Kenya that, yes, we're going to do this, but at the same time, we guarantee you that in 2-3 years' time, then you will reap the benefits of it.
Actually, while you are there, this is the first budget for the 2023-24 budget, which
and
is
for the Kenya Kwanza government.
Is the first budget for the Kenya Kwanza. So to that extent, I want to agree with you. But the most important thing is the taxpayers just want to be taxed and get a benefit. Actually, we call it tax give, tax give, tax give. To that extent, therefore, it's very important for the programs which have been put under the policy budget statements to stimulate the economy and to spur growth. if you stimulate the economy, if you spur growth, then you get more money. And that answers your question, do we have the money? Where is the taxpayer going to get money? But if that does not happen, then I agree with you. The taxpayer has an issue with that. So the most important thing is, once the taxpayer is taxed, then that money must be put into proper use. And Constitution is very clear. Chapter 12 of the Constitution, Public Financial Management Act, as well as Chapter 6 of the Constitution, which is leadership and integrity. It talks well in terms of how the resources should be used for the purpose and comfort of the taxpayer.
I want us to understand this,
Yes.
Dr. Githae. Just what then is the bone of contention with the bill that is being presented right here? If the government has come out to, just try and tell the people of Kenya, could you just please give us some time, allow us to do this, and we guarantee you that there's going to be that element of change that we've all been longing for. What then could be the bone of contention with this bill at this very point? Let's perhaps look at some of the highlights, and I think, okay, well, maybe not so clear because I'm using my email, but all the same, let's just look at the economic highlights of the proposed budget and tax changes as, what would be perhaps the main problem: introduction of taxation on digital tax assets, restriction of interest on foreign exchange losses, the proposals to include a new pay as you earn, that is tax bracket of 35% for an employment income above 500% or 500 per month. And I mean, Kenyans are asking just how many Kenyans earn 500,000 per month anyway. Proposal to reduce the income tax rate on monthly retail or rental income and withholding on rental income from 10%, that is to 7.5%. Proposal to increase the turnover tax rate from 1% to 3% and alter its bracket to about 0.5 million shillings, 15 million shillings. Exporters taxable services are now proposed to revert to exempt from VAT or from VAT. And then removal of a provision on application of waiver of penalty and interest increase in tax shortfall penalties on deliberate omission from 75% to about 200%. Reduction of the rate of IDF from about 3.5% to 2.5% of customs value, and that is RDL from 2.5% to 1.5% of customs value, and introduction of a new levy on specified goods, the export and investment proportion levy. The bill proposes to introduce 20% deposit requirement for taxpayers appealing to the High Court. That is from tax appeals tribunal refundable into the High Court decides in favor of the taxpayer, and a couple of other ones. And I mean, the latest, or what many people are talking about, is on tax, that is on fuel, and also the question of housing. And then we ask ourselves, fine, what could be the main bone of contention if the government is going to guarantee us that there's going to be value for this money, that after 7 years, then you'll have your own home, or after 20 years, then you'll have your own home? Why do we complain if the government is telling us? I mean, I doubt there's any better way of them telling us that just give us time and you'll see the benefits of this.
I think what is happening, there's no problem with the government even increasing the taxes, but probably the timing is the one that is not very right.
Is there going to be, time that is right ever? I mean, the conversation on the fuel levy is not foreign to us. We have been through this before.
Yes. And the last time we had that discussion, there was a huge public outcry.
Yes.
And actually the proposed rate of 16% was reduced to 8%. And now what the government is trying to do is again to push it to 16%. We are likely to see again a public outcry. And the reason I'm saying that the timing is not right is because the economy has not actually really recovered from the effects of COVID-19. There is still these effects of the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, the issue of the drought in the country. So if the government perhaps can consider to implement these new changes gradually, instead of at a go, then the reception by the general public would be a bit better. We have seen cases where the government, last year, in the finance bill for 2022, the government had proposed to ask the taxpayer to give a deposit of 50% of the tax that is in dispute before he could be allowed to appeal for that tax decision in High Court. That decision or that requirement, that proposal was shot down. And now the government again has come again. This time around, they are not asking for 50% deposit of the tax that is in dispute to be deposited by the taxpayer to the Commission of Taxes. Now they're asking for 20%. It is somehow better than the previous proposal by the government last year. But nonetheless, there are people who would argue that when a taxpayer is required to give a down payment for him to access the right to have a fair hearing, that would be by itself that would be by itself amount to the taxpayer accepting that he's also guilty. And that would also prevent many taxpayers from accessing the right for a fair hearing. Because if you are asked, for instance, we have had even cases where someone has been given a tax assessment of 10 billion, 50 billion. So if you ask to give a down payment of 20% of 50 billion, before you get a fair hearing, that would impede justice to the taxpayer.
Right.
So those are some of the issues that are raising concerns to the general public.
Okay.
And that's what we look forward to see how the government will be able to navigate around that.
May I mention something?
Yeah.
I think you're asking a very important question. What's the problem?
Well, what is the problem, really?
The problem is, and if you look at it, and I think this is where the media needs to come out very clear.
Yeah.
You flash back. During the campaign, none of both the opposition and the Kenya Kwanza told us about how they will be able to raise the taxes. Because these Kenyans did not want to hear.
In fact, they told us how they will reduce.
Yes. Now, Kenyans are asking, you could have told us these things during that time.
Right.
So why now? Okay. But what the finance bill is doing is a normal way of raising taxes and even the policy budget statement. But the most important thing is, and I think we need to ask ourselves, even in future, I think politicians need to be telling us the truth when they are campaigning. Okay.
The proposals that you have seen, and I believe that you've gone through the bill itself and the proposals that have been made, and some of them that I have read right here. Do you purely agree with all of them? Because we are at that delicate stage where we decide, is this going to sail through as it is? Is this going to, be quashed? Or are we going to make amendments to some of the proposals that have been made? Looking at the proposals, as an economist, what do you make of them? Which one would you suppose should be adjusted, or should they sail as they are? But of course, with a clear explanation as to the possibilities of us getting results.
There will be definitely amendments to the proposed.
You think so?
There will be.
Okay.
Because when we talk of the issue of housing, Kenyans have a lot of questions in relation to that.
Yeah.
When it comes to, for example, that anybody who is earning more than 500,000 will be able to pay that 5%. So the question is, should you tax that person more than the corporate tax, which is 30%? So these are some of the amendments I'm talking about. Yeah. But the most important thing is to look at the finance bill as intended to finance the public budget statements, which are the projects. And these projects should be able to do two key things. One, they should be able to stimulate the economy and spur growth. So it therefore means any shilling which is collected must be used prudently in accordance with the Constitution, especially chapters 12 of the Constitution and the Public Financial Management Act. Okay.
All right.
Yes. Because in any case, you are raising money from the Kenyans, so you have to invest it prudently to achieve benefits. Yes.
What do you make of this opening? And I know it's a constitutional right, and perhaps Professor Macharia Munene should answer that best. But then again, I'll ask all the same that we have until the 20th to give our very own view, and present our memorandum to the August House, so that they decide whether they loop in some of the proposals that we have made or not. And I think I started by asking this: just how much does that count?
That's a constitutional right.
Yes.
And you agree with me that Kenyans are very political.
Yes.
So they will raise those comments.
Would this be on political basis or maybe economic basis, and especially coming from specialists?
I think in relation to, it's more political than economics, because money has to be raised to finance the projects. I think that's one of the things we need to be clear and to accept. The only problem is Kenyans were not brought to this reality during the campaign, during the electioneering period, and I think they have been caught with the reality now that the finance bill has been able to come in. But the next thing is, if it is sailed through, because most likely it will sail through with amendments, then it becomes a law. Once it's law, then you have to pay the tax. And then the next thing is to be assured by the person collecting tax that this money will be used for the purpose intended prudently to achieve efficiency and effectiveness.
If amendments would be suggested, having gone through the proposals that are there, what do you suppose in your own capacity would require that aspect of amendment briefly?
Yes, if amendments are effected and the bill becomes law, then the taxpayers will have to comply with the law now.
But what are these specific ones you think would require amendment?
It is probably many things are likely to require amendments, and this is now the stage that the general public is interacting with the finance bill. So, but basically, like what we have seen cases when the government had proposed a certain rate. For instance, even the issue of the housing development fund, National Housing Development Fund. In the year 2018, the finance bill for 2018 had proposed that a rate of 1.5% be charged from the salaries of the Kenyan employees to go towards the project of housing development. But again, there was a huge public outcry, and that provision was actually scrapped out from, it was not enacted to law. So we are likely to see, there are cases even reading from the past, when the financial proposal that had been shared in a finance bill, some were amended, some were not amended. So for this one, because it was just released about a few days ago, it is on Thursday, and this is the time that Kenyans are interacting with it. We, as Dr. has said, we are likely to see some sail through without any amendments, but others are likely to be subjected to amendments or even to be scrapped out.
Dr. allow us to take a quick short break.
Yes, okay.
And unless I'm giving you 1 minute. 1 minute is okay?
Yes. Some of the things which are likely to bring in amendments is things like a VAT on fuel.
On fuel?
Because you see now, if we bring it into 16, that's going to raise the fuel pump. That will trigger the cost of living. So I would expect. Although the Kenya Kwanza government does not believe in the issue of subsidizing, because that one is a special case of subsidizing. You know, now it's 8%. So if it goes to 16 as is being proposed in the finance bill, I'm a bit concerned about that. The other one is the issue of NHIF. For those who are not employed, where do you get money to pay there? I think about 1,000, something to do that. So there's some of this.
That would not be a priority.
Also the issue of, I think, some deposit to be paid when you have some issues with the KRI. I think that's on the side which it should be seen and should be suitable for amendments, because KRI just doesn't require the money from you until and unless is a legitimate tax. So there should be no business of deposit when it comes to tax issues.
All right, interesting. You know, you speak of the campaign times, and I remember I was at the presidential debates, part and parcel of the team that was making it a success. And the president, as deputy then, highlighted just how much there would be need to look into this levy of fuel because it's outrageously taxed. And, he said they would look into just the realities and the nitty-gritty details of it to make sure that it goes down. But look what is happening today. Allow us to take a short break, and then we come back on that very note.
wakati mwingine kama weekend, mimi najiachilia.
Hata ukumbuki history.
Nikifika watu wangu wakinipokea na kupokeleka.
Umeset the mood.
Nimeset the mood. Naweza kupokeleka. Nikitumai kwamba mzima popote pale ulipo, nikikukaribisha katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi. Jina langu Elizabeth Mtuku. Katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi tunakupa nafasi kutangamana nao kila siku ya Alhamisi kuanzia saa 1:30 kuendelea siku nyingine. Tutapatana papa hapa umjue kiongozi mwingine.
Jiunge nasi toka hapa hadi ufuoni mwa bahari. Meli yetu itakapotua nanga kwa uhondo ribo ya riwaya hii mwisho wa kosa. Monica.
It's early morning in Maralal. Start your morning informed, educated, entertained, and above all, know your country. From the beautiful plains of Samburu County to the skyscrapers of Nairobi, Morning Cafe certainly got you covered. Indeed, a beautiful place to watch and certainly a moment of understanding and knowing your country. Indeed, to the remotest parts of every county. Join me, Linda Alela, every weekday from 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
The diversity of Kenya's wildlife has garnered international fame.
This is pellets that we give to the tourists, the giraffes. We ration because we don't want the giraffes to eat too much of this. We want them to have more of the natural browse.
We may not always get the opportunity to go out to see the wildlife, but you will never miss the opportunity to see it from the comfort of your couch.
This is home to animals that have been found out there either injured, abandoned, or confiscated from people who are holding them illegally.
Only on TV47 Wildlife, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m.
Disability is a club that anyone can join.
I live with special needs. It means I have a limitation. There are things I can't be able to do personally myself.
And in our journey to talk about disability, we tell the stories of those with disabilities and even sit with specialists to understand what it means for those affected directly and indirectly.
Everybody's life, mine has also been faced with ups and downs.
If it becomes a self-stigmatized thing where you feel like you are judging yourself too harsh, you blame yourself, and you perceive that it happened because you failed.
Join me, Zainab Mohammed, on Beyond the Limit.
As the people of Kenya as enshrined in the Constitution to the august house, so that moving forward we see whether they voted to sail through, whether they're going to propose amendments, or whether they quash it at that very level. The ODM side will remind us that, well, of course, the House majority is Kenya Kwanza, and then the possibilities of them seeing this bill sail through are extremely high. Just what will be left of the common mwananchi who feels like they would be necessary, it would be necessary for us to have adjustments on the financial bill. With us in studio, right next to me, I think we'll begin with you right now, CPA Dr. Alex Kamau, as well as CPA Dr. Githae. We've been with you all through, and finally, Professor Macharia Munene, the long-awaited one, is here with us. Thank you so much for creating time, Professor. Thank you. Professor is a political historian, and so we want to borrow some bit of history in relation to the problems, the economic problems that we've witnessed over time in the country. I am sure you have interacted with the copy of the 2023 financial bill, or finance bill, so to speak, and we ask ourselves just what way or what next for the people of Kenya. I think I was asking the gentleman, just what is the bone of contention if the government were to guarantee us today that, you know, every single penny, every single coin we take from you will be put to use, and in future you will get to experience the benefits of it. What would be the bone of contention anyway with this one?
Well, first, everything is political.
Yeah.
Everything. And,
is that a good thing or a bad thing?
it can be both.
Yeah.
Right now, it's not good.
It's not good.
Right now, it's not
Well,
good.
we say that politics is the bloodline of every other
It's
activity.
everything.
Yeah.
And sitting next to financial wizards here,
Yes.
I hesitate to delve into the depth. But it's a political problem. The government of William Ruto has a problem, an image problem.
Yeah.
It appears to be doublespeak. It says one thing and seemingly does another.
Another. Most governments do that, Professor.
Yeah, but they are careful on how they appear to do it.
Okay.
They just got a bad.
Yeah.
I think then also the philosophy of it. What's the purpose of government? Is to enable the citizens in the place to enjoy a good life, to expand the economy, to do everything that is comfortable, they feel nice, and to be proud to be part of that. But when the government appears to be going contrary to that, it appears to be oppressive. And taxation is one way of oppressing people.
Okay.
So that's why I say the government is having a problem, because it appears to be oppressive. Whether it is or not, I'll leave that to the
specialists.
The specialists.
All right.
But from the ordinary citizen like me, something is wrong. Perception. The best example of this is the housing tax. The logic of it does not make sense.
At all?
No.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Professor, you understand the difficulties that we have today of owning homes, and every Kenyan desires that.
Yes.
And reality is that what it is that we make cannot guarantee us that. There's a clear deficit in relation to that. Why does it not make sense?
The government cannot guarantee a home.
Okay. Now that is also one thing, yeah?
As simple as that. But it can create an environment
that is
in which
enabling
environment in which everyone who desires can desire and build a home.
Is it not with the tax proposals that we're having now?
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's not. First of all, if the way I read it, right or wrong, you force everybody to contribute 3%.
3%.
It's not a choice.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Right.
With a promise that in 15 or 20 years' time, you might own a home. Might.
The line might.
Might.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's one. Then the people who might even have access to those affordable houses will not afford.
Okay.
It's simple as that. Today, those flats, because they are flats, but they are going for what? 2, 3, 4 million shillings? Assuming somebody is earning 30,000 shillings.
Yeah.
And those are, in Kenyan standards, they are not doing badly.
Yeah.
Now, when will this person pay the 2 million shillings?
To manage. If 3% is going to be deducted from them.
There's something wrong with the logic.
Yeah.
And the explanation, the government is not doing a good job of explaining it.
Professor, it's 3% from you, 3% from your employer.
Yeah.
So it amounts to 6%.
Okay, assuming it's you.
Let's just say 5%.
I don't know what you earn, that's okay. The 3%, let's assume you earn 20,000 shillings.
Yeah.
3% of your 20,000 is 6,000. Plus another 6,000 from the employer.
Yeah.
That's 12,000.
Right.
Yeah? When will these 12,000 become a million?
Amount to a million.
You'll be dead, long dead and gone.
Yeah.
So there's something wrong with the logic. And people can see it. That's why the grumbling is. So wait a minute, you're not making sense. And the credibility of the government is very necessary for it to function.
Yeah.
Because the minute people doubt its credibility, it does not matter how good the plans are. It does not matter what the logic is. It's just lost credibility. And unfortunately for the William Ruto government, it's losing credibility on this count. That alone. Then you look at the behavior. Our MCAs now want to be given about 4 times their salary. When there's no money.
Yeah.
And they're saying they're going to go on strike. And that's what we are seeing. These are privileged people who are hoarding the public money when there's no money. The MPs, the other day in Mombasa, And they said they were going on strike. Imagine these MPs going on strike. And they are in a very luxurious hotel in Jitters. Even they did not matter whether they were in Wazimio or the other, the Kwanzaa.
Yeah.
They all said they are going on strike. And you are sitting there like, these people, what's going on? And there was no Ruto MP, there was no Raila MP, they were all together. And then after they were given the money, so there was money, so they were given. Then they would go back to the hotel, the nice hotel. They had never left. So now they go back to the meeting and start talking, now what can we do about the country? You know, and then they said, what's wrong with these people? So where did the government get the money to pamper the MPs in Mombasa? That's the optics,
Yes.
You know. And then, of course, Raila is very happy.
At this point.
Oh, yes.
Because he swims
he's got ammunition and he's using it.
Yeah.
The excessive hiring of some strange people. And people say, do you need that person? Do you need that person there?
Yeah.
And that's money, And so the expenditures, it was Ruto's advisor, who is David Lee, who said they are wasting money in a lot of things. And this is from the inside.
Yeah.
So those from the outside watching this thing, and then the insider says, yeah, we are wasting things. It creates a very bad impression as to whether the government is credible, whether the citizens can believe in it. And the impression being created is that the money, yes, they'll take it because they'll just take it anyway. It's got nothing to do with fairness. They'll just take the money and then they'll misuse it as they are doing.
Yeah.
So the NHIF, and
yes, the NHIF also.
They check what's going on, and that misuse is confined to a few people, and they get away with it.
Right.
So that's why I'm saying the government is having problems
in how they
credibility. For people, it needs to work extra hard, and instead of raising taxes, it should be lowering them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Logistically speaking, but even before we come to that, Professor, I think the gentlemen who are economists should tell us whether they had confirmed whether 26% or 3% of 20,000 would be
300 shillings.
300 shillings, not 6,000 or 600, not 6,000. So it's 600.
6% of?
No, 3% of 20,000.
Should be 600.
Yeah, all right. So it's not 6,000.
You see, that's why I didn't do very well in everything.
That's why you and I did not.
That's why we are here. In fact, I was being generous.
Yeah.
Now, take their figure because they are the wizards.
Yes.
That's 600.
Yeah, 600.
Or 1,200. When will it get to 1 million?
When will it get to 1 million?
These are simple logics.
Yeah.
The people are asking, please give us a better explanation than that. I don't know who is advising the president on these matters. Yeah. He has a battery of people called advisors, led by David Lee. So, what's going on? And I think there is a confusion between economics and politics. And that's why we have a discipline called political economy, which balances the political necessities and the economic needs.
All right, so here we are, and they are clear economic needs. Professor, let me take it away from you.
But they have to be
balanced.
How
do you
with
balance
the political necessities? Because without politics, there will be no economics.
And this is the reality. Then we ask this question, fine. We'd want to say, instead of raising the taxes, you should be lowering them. Logistically speaking, and even as an economist, and you're trying to balance the papers, reality is that we're not in the best of state. And we don't need to be explained to some of these things. It's not rocket science. It's evident that really economically, we're not doing well. We're talking about the budget, we're talking about the debts. All this is supposed to be financed by the taxpayers' money. How can we even think of reducing the taxes anyway?
That's for sure. It's a very tricky situation that we find ourselves in because the government has only two sources of revenue, either to tax its citizens or to borrow, because we are not very lucky that we have natural resources. There are countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait. Those ones, they rely heavily on their natural resources in form of oil.
You think we do not have enough natural? We have oil in Turkana. What happens to it?
Yes, the exploration of that oil is still in the formative stages. We hope that at the end of the day, it will be found to be productive to even mine it, because sometimes we can use so much resources mining, and what we are getting does not justify that process.
That process, okay.
Yes. So at where we are right now, we have no choice to continue borrowing, because if we are to tax, if we are only to rely on the tax collection revenue, then the Kenyans would be hurt more, because right now the Kenyans are already feeling the pinch of high taxation. So if now we decide not to borrow, it will be even worse. But I would give an appreciation to the Kenya Kwanza government, because it has actually reduced the fiscal deficit from the budget of last year, where the amount borrowed vis-a-vis the GDP was at 5.8%. But now the amount borrowed for the proposed budget, it is at 4.4%, because we are borrowing about 700 billion. If you divide 700 billion by our GDP, which is projected to be 16 trillion by the end of the 2023-24 financial year, multiplied by 100, it comes to about 4.4%. So that by doing that, even the government is very conscious and alive to the fact that it would want to reduce even the debt ratios, because when the previous government was leaving office, there was a time that the debt to GDP was at 68%. Right now it is about 60%, the national debt to GDP. The one that has been recommended by IMF as the sustainable ratio is at 55%. And the government, that's why we can see the government taking those steps towards achieving that sustainable level. So in the meantime, the Kenyans will have to bear that pain. But in the long run, if the government implements everything as it is, then we might enjoy at the end of the day.
Kenyans would want to know just what exactly do we mean by in the long run. Timelines, give us timelines to this. And Dr. Githae, reality is that I am not an economic guru, I will tell you for free, but the possibilities of this continuing and us continuing to experience economic downturn are high, because first of all, we're talking about elevated cases of inflation, we're talking about high interest rates, we're talking about further weakening of the shillings. Timelines to this in the long run, what exactly would that be?
Kenyans were not told the truth during the campaign.
Yeah.
And for reasons I do not know, they also did not question why they were not being told the truth.
Do you suppose those ones that were campaigning had the truth with them? I know you'd want to say that the deputy government, that the current president was a deputy then. Perhaps they did not understand, and you could tell it from how they reacted after assuming power that, oops, we did not know that we're going to inherit empty coffers. So maybe they did not know.
Since they were not told the truth during the campaign, they have to be aware these are some of the consequences.
Okay.
And the consequences are such that they have to accept the first budget to go on and then see how it will be implemented, because it's the first budget for the Kenya Kwanza. Then that way they are able to rate the utilization of the resources which have been collected from the Kenyans. I think that's one of the things which Kenyans have to
deal with,
to bear and deal with, and learn a lot from the politics, so that next time, as the professor is saying, we need to ask ourselves: should we trust the politicians or should we trust the economists? The other thing I also want to mention is, and I think Professor needs to hear this, I still maintain from the history, taxpayers or human beings don't want to pay tax unless they can be assured that that tax will be used for the purpose and the intention to benefit the same people being taxed. So to that extent, there is need for any government which is taxing Kenyans to do two things. One, to have very high level of financial discipline. If it lacks, then I can agree with the professor, the credibility is lost. Now, the next thing is what we call enforcement standards. Our enforcement standards are very low. People will steal money and get away with it. I'm told that the end of the budget is lost. Whether it's true or not, I don't know whether standards have been done. But if we talk over, even if it's not even a rand, but a whole trillion out of the 3.6, that's a lot of money which can be able to address the issue of tax savings. So this is where Kenyans need to be convinced that yes, we are taxing you, but at the same time, we are cautious of how we are spending this. Some of the recent, and I can agree with the opposition, some of the recent actions by the Kenya Kwanza, I think they don't convince the Kenyans that there is financial discipline. I think that's something which we need to quickly address.
How best can they? How best can they? Maybe Professor, as a politician, would tell us how best. Is it how you package your information? Is it just coming out to them and, with blatant truth, tell them it's going to be tough, but here we are, and in a certain time we will manage this? How best can they do this?
Maybe they need to change their talking tactics.
And lie to Kenyans?
No.
And not be truthful
what they've
men?
been saying sometimes has appeared as a lie.
Yeah.
So they need to change that.
Okay.
So that what they say sounds credible. And people can say, that somebody has spoken like a mature person. There is a difference between people who speak maturely and immaturely. There are some times when some people in the government speak and you imagine that's an immature person. We need to change that to the point where when you speak, people say, Linda said that, okay, that's Linda, it's okay.
But is it not what we are saying, that during campaigns, with all the maturity, they spoke to the people of Kenya and told them, this is what we're going to do. This is not what they're doing right now. So how much can we trust that?
No, we don't trust politicians too far. And careful about it.
Yeah.
But the last election, if you look at it carefully, it really was an emotional thing. And there are a lot of people who voted against Uhuru Kenyatta.
Yeah.
Not so much William Ruto.
Right. It was a protest vote.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. And the consequences did not seem to matter very much.
Yeah.
And remember one time Uhuru told us that he's losing 2 billion shillings a day. Through some
corrupt activity. Yeah.
We have not been told whether those routes have been closed.
Yeah.
And so the 2 billion which is disappearing every day
could still be
disappearing.
Okay.
About which is almost 1 trillion shillings per year. And so when you say you're going to tax us more, you say so that it can go again. So the way the president and his deputy particularly address the public is important. And maybe they need to talk less.
Yeah.
And there are some other people who can do the talking for them. They need to talk less so that they are not held accountable to everything. Right now, they have given the impression that they have to respond to everything that Raila says.
Okay.
And not just Raila, but Raila's subordinates. Whatever they say, Gachagua and Ruto have to reply. He said, now, what are you doing? In fact, those other people don't mind if you do that. So we then go back to the Kibaki era. He inherited an economy which is as bad, even worse than this one. Yet, by adopting policies that made sense, first he told people, if you want money, it is in the bank. Go to the bank. And people went to the bank and they got loans, they got money at a fair price. So the banks which used to behave very badly big banks. They did not want to see ordinary people like you and I. So suddenly they opened up. They were on the street saying, do you want to open an account?
Yeah.
You know, it was a bit, that helped to stimulate the economy, change things around.
But that worked then, Professor. Why are we here today if really that was a
That's what
thing?
we need to find out. How did we get in here? We talk about the IMF. My good friends have talked about that because the IMF said we have to do it. So in the first place, how did you get into that mess of the IMF, which is the one now dictating what happens in Kenya instead of the people we elected?
Yeah.
How did we get there? So the philosophy behind it needs to be questioned.
Okay.
And there are those who think that you don't have to do everything the IMF says. As long as you got your act together. You get your act together. And then you can negotiate with the IMF. Then we have the debts we are being told that we have incurred, which most of us don't know how they were incurred.
Yeah.
Yet we are paying for things we don't know. They can be rescheduled. But then rescheduling with the lender, whether it's the Chinese or whoever it is, it's a political act. Yeah? Because you have to talk to these people in a respectable way, and they talk to you in a respectable way, and you agree, yes, some things can be done. Yeah? That means they don't have to have their thumb on your foot. Yeah? When it's a matter of discussion. Yeah? So do we have the right people talking to the lenders or not? Or we are just being told you have to do it because the IMF said, what? Yeah. There are just a few men and women called the IMF sitting somewhere. And I said, no, wait a minute, you are not making sense. You know, you don't want to drive people to a point where they feel desperate.
Yeah.
And my concern right now is that the citizens are being driven to a point of desperation. And if they are driven to a point of desperation, all the theories don't make sense. We have a problem in Sudan.
Yes.
Those uprisings. What are those theories going to help now?
Nothing.
When you have a major uprising that really makes leaders look awkward, to be polite.
Yeah.
People are starving. And if you ask properly what happened, there were bad decisions at the top.
Yeah.
Or they didn't pay attention to advice, to good advice. So before you can say the IMF has said you must, let's also look at the country. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Are we in a position to drive the country into desperation when maybe you can find better ways of dealing with the issues?
Okay.
And a long time ago, and the economists would say, there used to be a fellow called John Maynard Keynes, who used to argue that in times of crisis, the government should get into deficit spending. Why? Make people believe they have something to do. Give some, like the National Youth Service, give them something to do, and you divert their attention.
They used to call it kazi
mtaani. It was an attempt, but they didn't do a good job.
Okay.
But the philosophy is the same.
Yeah.
At the same time, Keynes also pointed out, when the economy picks up and it's sitting up, you withdraw.
All right.
Slowly. I think we are in that situation where we should be thinking of deficit spending without taxing people. Otherwise, if your tax base is very small because nobody has a job, what are you taxing? And that's the confusion that we have right now.
So we can't tax our way up to property.
No, we can't. So, but we can find ways of increasing the tax base by ensuring that a lot of people are working, producing, and then they'll pay.
I stay 30 seconds more on you. I mean, unless you're a stranger in Jerusalem, you witnessed what happened with I think it was a fuel levy at some point in time when the nays had it somehow in parliament, but the ayes eventually had it.
Yes.
You know, you could hear a lot of nays, but eventually the speaker said the ayes have it.
Yes.
And that clearly tells you.
His year was not very good.
And that clearly tells you that perhaps this is basically what is going to play out in relation to this. So then what?
Well, that's why we need sober minds.
Yeah.
We do need sober minds at every level of decision making.
Yeah.
And I will not complain if these two gentlemen were asked to help. in the thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they do. But we need to rethink. The whole country needs to be rethinked. Not just the economists or the financial wizards, and not just the MPs. And sometimes they have problem thinking.
Yeah.
The whole country.
Yeah.
Where are we going?
Okay.
How can we get out of this mess? Because we are in a mess. And it is not a preserve of a few people who hold high offices. It's a national challenge.
It's a national challenge.
Because when there is an uprising, we are all affected.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think it can be done.
Okay.
Yeah, it can be done.
And we take a quick short break, Professor, and come back and ask the gentleman.